And we are live. Welcome to Life Action Roleplay with
Cynthia Marie
and Ryan Omega. Our beloved co-host Kai is still working on things for his Dystopia Rising NorCal, which is coming up very soon. We love you, Kai. We understand why you're not here.
We miss you.
We miss you. You're here in spirit. And speaking of, well, I was about to say speaking of spirits, but that's not appropriate. Awkward. We have our guests here. Introduce yourselves, please.
Hi, my name is Bruce Monach. I storytell with Ryan Omega, and I'm also doing a show with him called Anesidora coming up on Maze Arcana.
Woo! Mm-hmm. And
hi, I'm Joanna Cross, and I storytell Vampire with Bruce and with Ryan.
Yay!
Awesome.
I'm so excited to have you here because I know, Bruce, I wanted you on this podcast for at least 9 months. Like, it was a long time that I've wanted you on this podcast, and you're finally here, so I'm very, very happy.
All we've been hearing is Bruce.
Yay, me.
Very popular.
Yeah, so what drinks do we have today?
Sprite.
I have purified water from the faucet held in a reusable Costco bottle.
And I have Twining's Earl Grey tea, which is my preferred Earl Grey tea, in a Burst Media mug that belongs to one of my roommates who might not actually live here anymore.
Oh, wow.
And I don't have a drink, but what I have in front of me is a big cookie made by Joanna herself for my birthday.
Nom, nom, nom.
Nom, 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 that I'm just grabbing a fork and just digging right in. By the way, the reason why we all often mention what drinks are we having is because we usually like to talk about stuff we like to promote. So if there's anyone out there that is looking for a place to promote, just contact me and we might be able to set something up. So you're definitely open to being able to pimp out more stuff because we've been fortunate for our podcast that people have been promoting us. We want to be able to return that in turn.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Cool. Next thing, shout-outs. Does anybody have any shout-outs?
Oh, man. My shout-out has to go to my new cast of LA by Night on Geek and Sundry. Holy crap. That first episode was insanity.
So good. Oh, my God. If people haven't watched it,
yeah.
I was watching the entire time.
It was a lot of fun to hang out. So Erica Ishii, B. Dave Walters, Alex Ward, and our awesome storyteller Jason Carl, who has been on our podcast. Thank you guys for having me with you all in the group. I'm so appreciative of being part of the cast. And yeah, we have a new episode tomorrow.
Where can they find this?
Twitch.tv/Geek and Sundry.
Friday nights
at 8 to 11. It's so... Oh, we hit 10,000 viewers live stream for our premiere.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
amazing.
Insane amount of people.
insane.
So, wow, thank you. Yeah, that's my shout out to my peeps.
And all the fan art. Oh, my God.
So much fan art. I've never seen myself drawn so many different ways.
That's awesome.
My shout out is to my dear friends Jordan and Christine, who got married last weekend.
Woo, woo, woo.
At Malibu. Wanted to shout out to them because they are dear friends and also LARPers, and it's amazing whenever you see two LARPers get married.
And Jordan was on one of our previous shows too.
Yes, he was. He plays my brother Shakes.
Yay.
In Twin Mask. So it's really, really cool to help Jordan shop for his wedding suit. I had to dissuade him from buying a jacket that had an orange label on it because his Shakes is addicted to oranges.
Oh, yeah.
And so he showed me this one jacket and he said, it has an orange label on it. I said, no, not for your wedding, no. But it has no,
Jordan, no.
No, but I love them dearly and I'm very happy for them. Congratulations,
Woo-hoo.
Jordan and Christine.
I guess I can go next. So I actually thought about this in advance because I've listened to his podcast before and knows he makes people do shout-outs. But I thought it would be appropriate, even though it's been a decade, to give a shout-out to Dead City Productions at Northwestern University, which is the Vampire LARPing group that I first started doing Vampire LARP with.
Right on.
So
nice.
That was a lot of fun. And yeah, I thought that would be appropriate.
Very appropriate. Good job, Bruce. Joanna, do you have any?
I haven't been listening to the podcast recently, so I don't have any shout-outs. Thanks for calling me out for not being prepared, Bruce.
You're welcome.
Is there any particular player in the game or any particular character that kind of stood out to you while you were storytelling?
I do always have to give a shout-out to my FTH crew, Izzy and Aaron and Hillary, who have come in and taken to role-playing like the absolute bosses they are.
Yes!
Awesome.
That's a perfect shout out.
All right. And the topic for today is finding humor themes in dark places or dark stories. And the idea behind this is just noticing the amount of different games and stories like Vampire, like places like Dystopia Rising where they deal with post-apocalyptic zombies and other horror themes where people tend towards a little bit of humor in order to deal with a lot of these horror situations. And even within Hollywood Forever LARP, which is our LARP, we do tend a little bit towards lighter themes just so that we can make these characters or these situations digestible.
Yeah, I think I would focus it down even more. That we're not talking about like just crazy dark humor like Evil Dead or whatever. That's a whole different genre. But more specifically, one of the things we focus on, I know I do as storytellers and we do in our Hollywood Forever LARP, is creating a world that has dark themes and dark elements that people can play with and use while still having lighter elements that people can hold on to and take a breath between the crazy dark sections.
So I would dive in and ask you three, can you guys tell us a little bit about Hollywood Forever LARP? I've played it, so I can't really talk about the behind-the-scenes stuff, but so you guys go.
I feel like Bruce should probably start this journey. It's your brainchild.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start with the museum, because that's kind of where it started. So for my birthday, almost a year ago at this point, I decided it would be really fun to decorate my house like a haunted museum, and went to a thrift store and bought a bunch of cheap paintings and hung them on the walls. And I got Ryan, my brother, Daniel, who's my roommate, and another friend of ours, Andre, who also works on Maze Arcana. And we each built these like custom exhibit rooms, I guess you could call them.
Yeah.
And the whole place we ran all escape roomy, where we literally put locks on doors and locks on cabinets and got, once again, chests at thrift stores and locked them. And then we gave all of our friends these characters so that they could come into the house, and we ran a museum opening night and then let them go through the house. So it was sort of like a fun LARP escape room experience, and we decided to try it again after talking to Jason Carl, who came to the museum and had a good time. And so we ran a Vampire LARP. And so on that one, Joanna had a good time playing in the museum, so she stepped up as a storyteller for our Vampire LARP and helped me with writing. She probably wrote about half the characters by the end.
Yeah, probably. I mean, the thing that was really interesting about Bruce's initial museum party is that not very many people there had played a LARP if they knew what one was at all. So I knew what they were, but it was the first LARP I had ever played in. And I just came early to help set up and put things up, some of which I wasn't allowed to know what it was. I was told to make cookies, and I didn't know why. But yeah, what I found is I really enjoyed the sort of behind-the-scenes parts of it almost as much as I enjoyed playing. And I actually ended up in the room that Ryan created for that particular LARP, which was a scary, hellish demon room where we met with the devil, and Jason Carl saved our butts, as he does.
I heard about this.
Yeah. But yeah, then I had sort of been looking for a more creative outlet, and Bruce knew that. And he said, "Oh, do you want to help me like run the LARP. And I was like, yeah, sure. What do I have to do? And there was a point at which I asked, so what's my title? What am I doing? He's like, oh, you're a storyteller. And I, in my mind, went, okay, that's great. What's a storyteller? What do I do? I don't know. Okay. So I sort of jumped into this completely headfirst, not knowing what I was doing.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah. I always say I've run more LARPs than I've played. Which is an odd situation from what I understand. But it's been really fun to actually just create all the characters and watch people bring them to life. It's really, really cool.
That's awesome. I also heard Joanna talking about making the cookies for the museum. Reminded me a little bit of some of the lighter elements we had at the museum. Mm-hmm. So we started with this sort of dark story about this haunted museum, these ancient seals where this mansion had been built over an old gold mine that had dug so deep it found a portal to another dimension where these dark spirits came through and cursed the land. So these seals were placed on it to prevent these things from happening. And in the museum, the seals were broken, trapping everyone inside, and they were all going to die and be destroyed if they couldn't restore the seals by the end of the night. And that was the story. So, it's dark. You've got these evil spirits going around. They're attacking people. They're going crazy. You've got this demon who's cutting these deals and making people tell them his secrets. And there's all these dark elements. But you also had my brother's character at the game, who was the elven bodyguard / security guard.
Oh, that's right. I also had to find a wig at Party City at 4 o'clock in the afternoon before the LARP.
Oh my God, Keith.
Joanna got us a nice long platinum blonde Legolas wig. And he wore a plaid t-shirt and blue jeans with cowboy boots so that as we pitched it, he could be one of the Winchester brothers from Supernatural meets Legolas meets a Christmas elf. So his character was very powerful and strong and existed so that if any of the players tried to have combat with each other, he could just shut it down because he was fast, he could turn invisible, he could do all this stuff. But he was incredibly stupid, so he couldn't help with the puzzles or breaking the spells or casting the rituals or any of the stuff. So he just wandered around as this really dumb elf. And one of the things he also did was he had a secret cache in the museum that you could only solve the puzzle of if you found one clue in each of the exhibits, and he was wearing a key around his neck that you had to get from him, which no one actually did.
I missed all of this.
But there was a lot happening in the museum.
Yes, all of it.
So if someone had managed to find all the clues, put them together, and get the key from his neck, then there was a secret cache of Christmas cookies in the museum.
Oh, man!
And that was why we needed Joanna to bake Christmas cookies.
Yep. I didn't know why. I just do what I'm told.
And I feel like that is going to be, that I think sets the tone of everything we're going to talk about from here out. Dark elements, ancient portals, sacrifices, and all these things, and an elf who's hiding Christmas cookies, all in the same story.
And his name is not Keebler.
No. It should have been, though.
He had some equally ridiculous pun name, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we've heard about Joanna and Bruce's involvement. Ryan, what about you?
So, in being involved with this, 2 things. One was the room that I designed was the Infernal Room. Mm-hmm. And so it was supposed to be the most literally satanic of all of the rooms. But instead of spending a lot of money on buying demon things, I kind of thought, well, people will eventually, get used to it, but what can I do to make it a little bit more scary in a way that will get people by being subtle? And I kind of thought of a person who was actually obsessed religious to focus into that room. So instead of having lots of demons up, what I had was masking tape of lots of crosses. I had pictures of the Virgin Mary. I had Memento Mori, which looked normal, but because they're Memento Mori, one of the people in that picture was dead. I had pictures, I have writings that I used with my left hand on writing exorcism prayers and other Catholic prayers. So it just looked like someone was super obsessed. And it got to a couple of people. And on the other end, I invited Jason to this game because one thing I knew about Jason is that while he was producing the 5th edition of Vampire, I know that he's always storytelling, or he's always running games, or he's always doing something on behalf of other people, but he himself doesn't get many opportunities to play. And so that's when I ended up inviting him to a D&D game, but I also said, you should just come to this my friend's birthday LARP because I think it would be fun for you. And he messaged me and he was so excited to try something different. And he came into my infernal room and he came and played with Satine and with Joanna and a few other people that were there. And they had to solve things by role-playing them out rather than just having putting things together. There was a role-play element to solving the puzzle. And some of it was confessing their darkest secrets or betraying somebody else.
Yeah, I left the room for that point.
Yeah.
Before we were locked in.
The door slammed and they were locked in. But there were different ways to solve that room, and Jason solved it by spraying me with holy water. Yeah, and I melted, and they got the seal, and they were able to complete it the rest of the night. So that was my involvement with the museum game.
Awesome.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. So we decided to move a little farther away from the escape room and more into the role-playing element when we did our Vampire LARP, which originally was only supposed to be one night. We were just going to do one fun night of Vampire to introduce a bunch of people to the world and the setting and all that stuff.
Again, beginner friendly. A lot of people there hadn't LARPed before or had just come to the museum. That had been their first LARP the way it was for me.
Yeah, a lot of people had only done the museum, or some had played Vampire Tabletop but had never done the LARP. Others were just always really interested, and some of them were like, I've never heard of any of this, but let's do it. So for that one, we designed pretty much everyone's characters in advance. And we had, once again, some dark themes. I was personally playing a Sabbat bishop, and I brought a whole bunch of people into this. I had this my garage, where I had hung fabric from the ceiling to create walls. And I built a small maze, essentially, where players had to, wander through this maze, and I gave them glow sticks to go through. And when they got to the end of the maze, I had set up this plastic skeleton and these candles, and they had to perform a ritual. And that ritual involved things like revealing secrets and telling a little bit about themselves, because I was heavily influenced by Ryan's Infernal Room, and I pretty much stole the idea.
It's an homage.
I'm honored by that. That's cool.
But the thing that I really loved about doing that is that a lot of times in Vampire, especially sometimes in one-shots, you can have these intricate backstories and they don't come up. Yeah. So I like the idea of giving people this opportunity to basically sit around and talk about their backstory and their characters, because it was all in order to cast the spell, everyone has to say their deepest desire, and then they have to say their darkest secret, and all. So it let the players have the fun of telling each other all of these things. Mm-hmm. And then once they completed the ritual, also I had a fog machine going the whole time. So once they completed the ritual, I opened up the final door opened, and I was there with these dragon wings and a tail and a horse skull and all sorts of crazy stuff. No cookies. But what I did have was, since I was in the garage, I had my fridge in the garage, which I opened up, and I had bought these blood bags and filled them with Hawaiian Punch. Yeah. So the side door of the refrigerator was filled with these blood bags, and I handed them out to them, and I was like, I am the bishop of the Sabbat. Welcome to my secret lair. Have a drink. And the players were like, what is this really? And I was like, it's Hawaiian Punch. So they said, that's exactly what I want right now, being in this dark maze, huddled up together, casting this spell. So we all just sat around sipping Hawaiian Punch out of blood bags and did the rest of the scene as they met with the bishop.
They even had blood types on them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They had they had the full stickers with blood types and everything.
That's
and
awesome.
once again, there's an example, I feel like, of taking this dark theme, building this story, building these characters, and then lighten the mood with some Hawaiian punch and blood bags.
Awesome.
But I really enjoyed how that came over. Also, in addition, the plot of the game was that the prince of the city and a bunch of primogen had left, so they needed a new city government. And in order to oversee this city government, my brother was playing the prince of a different city, who was a Malkavian, he was so ancient and powerful that just being around him would drive you insane.
Oh my God, the look on
Cynthia
Cynthia's
has
face.
I guess Cynthia had to interact
her
with him.
hands right now.
Yeah, still reliving that moment.
So one of the things we did that I really enjoyed was he had a deck of cards that we had made and printed out that were all these weird hallucinations and compulsions.
Wait, talk about how he looked too.
He
yeah.
was dressed like a cowboy.
Thank you.
He had cowboy boots.
Really talk
He
about
had a
the
blue
look.
cowboy shirt,
Well,
cowboy
he's
hat.
the Prince of Sacramento, which
Yeah.
is the capital of California, and which means that, he's basically the Prince of California. Hi, representing here is the ghoul of the Prince of Sacramento.
Yes,
So,
I wanted
yeah.
to get to introducing Joanna's amazing character, who is Cora, the ghoul of the Prince of Sacramento.
Yes, and while everybody else was running around in their vampire garb and being very, emotional in their black eyeliner and fangs, I had on a gold romper and was
Yeah, you did.
very, very upset about missing the Taylor Swift concert. Yep.
That.
So we loved it as this amazing contrast to all these people, dark and spooky, and with all these dark, deep characters. And then you have a guy dressed like a cowboy from the Gold Rush talking about how much he loves America.
But
America.
did we actually talk about what the cards did?
No, I don't think I got this.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted with the way he looked.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You need to know that he was dressed like a cowboy, and his ghoul Joanna was wearing a gold romper, which should also be clarified was super glittery and shiny.
Oh yeah, it was sequined. It was sort of like, it was the kind of thing you buy off of Amazon, and you're either going to use it on New Year's or it's some really tacky costume party.
And it was beautiful. So Keith, throughout the night, was carrying around these cards that had hallucinations and compulsions on them, which if people were around him too long, he would give them, which led to, I know that B-Dave started seeing people bleeding out of their eyes, which was amazing.
So what's interesting is being, I guess, a veteran LARPer at this point, I think all the new players were totally into him, and I was like, that's a whole bolt of nope. No, I know that, no. I kept avoiding him at all, and I start seeing everybody else, like, having issues, and I'm just like, y'all hung out with him, didn't you? All right, come here, come to mama. Let me come atone for your sins. Good Lord.
Did he get to you?
Hell no. No.
Smart for that.
I think, honestly, the only time that I ran into him, I think he and I were going down the stairs, and I was having problems with my dress, and I don't think he wanted to hit me with a derangement while trying to go down in a gown. Yeah. So that was nice of him. But yeah, that was the only time I, met up with your brother.
Yeah. By the way, talk about your character in our Hollywood Forever LARP.
Oh, dear Lord. The
Yeah.
bitch. Oh, the bitch of everywhere.
She's totally not Sabat, and she is a primogen of the Camarilla.
Totally
Let's say that was-
You're just a very quiet, demure.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Here, okay, I'm gonna throw it back on you guys. You guys tell me what you think my character is, and I will elaborate from there.
I haven't actually dealt that much with Lucretia.
Okay.
Actually, but I think she knows what's going on.
Okay.
But she knows that there are plenty of people making noise around her that she can let them yell at each other.
As the storyteller who is in charge of the Sabat, I don't want to be too spoilery about anything I might know about her past, because she's definitely not Sabat now. She's a full member of the Camarilla.
I gave them up.
She's moved beyond that. But no, she is the head of a Mexican cartel and a La Sombra drug dealer. and ancient and powerful vampire.
Yeah.
There was even a wanted poster.
Oh yeah,
Sitting in my kitchen right now. It's really cool.
yeah. So one of the things, my roommate Daniel, who helps us run these games, is a really amazing artist. You may have seen, if you look at like Cynthia's and some of the people's profiles on Twitter, I know they've set Daniel's drawings as their profile pictures.
Because they're so adorable.
So he drew little caricatures of everyone who was at the first vampire game, and they are amazing and super cute and fun.
I love that.
I love that people like now have it almost like as a badge of pride.
Oh, it is.
It was
It's
so
so rad. So my little caricature, which is really funny, is I am one of probably the darkest vampire there besides Demas. And my little caricature, literally, she's like smiling, being like, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes at all. Oh my goodness. So I guess the part that I wanted to talk about with my character, and this is something that you and I talked about a lot, was her skewed morality. So I talked to you guys earlier about serial killers and how I'm interested in the psychology behind skewed morality. And so I use kind of Lucretia as that vehicle of how Lasombra would think. So Lasombra, if people aren't familiar, are more of the religious type vampires who use religion as their weapon. Sort of a deal, rather as Ventrue use they're the business type, we're the church versus the state, if you will. So what I wanted to venture on with Lucretia was making people repent for their sins and why they've done anything bad. So anything she's heard that they've done bad, she'd make them come to her and kneel and pray. But in the background, because she's a shadow manipulator, in the background she's the Mexican cartel giving them the drugs and being like, yeah, do the bad thing so you can come and repent with me. It's been so much fun to hear people's characters' vices, because you guys have all developed amazing characters with everybody, and so everyone has a vice. And I was like, come talk to me about your vice. We should pray about this. This is a terrible thing that you're doing. And obviously, I'm speaking in an accent in my character. But after a while, people are like, "What? Why am I doing that?" I was like, "Just get on your knees, just pray."
Wow.
This reminds me that one of the things that I love about our two main antagonists in this game, who are Lucretia and my NPC, the Bishop Demas, is that they are two of the nicest characters in the game. We go around being Demas just wants to help everyone with whatever they need. He's like, what doesn't make you happy about the Camarilla? What stifles you? What do you want? What do you want to follow and go into new things? And it's basically all just a soft pitch for joining the Sabbat.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
Whereas Lucretia is going around talking about repenting for your sins and being a better person, and she personally is repenting for all these terrible things and to bring her Lasombra clan into the Camarilla.
And it's great to have you there, because I'm sorry for whoever's listening. I have them all wrapped around my little pinky, because when you show up, I'm just like, how dare he show up? He's from the Sabbat. How can you guys let him here? And blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, I can't believe he's here. What are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, Lucretia, it's okay. What is it? Don't do that. So do you want to come join the Sabbat with me?
It's something we were talking about before, about how if we were in the game being all oh, we're super evil, evil. First off, we wouldn't be none of these new players would be listening to us being maybe you're right. But also people would be avoiding us. They wouldn't want to talk to us. And it's also not fun to play with, which, in my opinion, one of the main things about these games is fun, and you want to have a good time. And one of the ways to have a good time with the Bishop of the Sabbat is he's not going to try to roll you in an alley. He's going to try to get you to get on his side. And
so one way to get on Lucretia's side, which is quite funny, I think you guys remember this moment, was how many lovers Lucretia has.
Oh yeah,
my God.
At a certain point.
Lucretia got around Los Angeles.
And quite quickly, too. Quite quickly. And so I had, 1, 2, 3... 4, 5, 6.
I can't even keep track.
6.
Yeah,
5 for sure,
really
and then you
know.
collected some later, like Pokemon.
I did. But seeing their faces at the very end when they were all found out that they didn't know each other. That was your one thing to me, is that none of the lovers could know who it was.
Yeah.
So only one person knew, and that's because he came in late to the game. It was PJ, because he was just like, I don't know, and I was like, here, I'll tell you all the things, because that'll make you feel better about what was going on. So he was the only person who knew that she had that many lovers.
Yeah, I think that's something that we talked about with each other initially. We were like, oh, she wants all of these lovers. Yeah, well, they can't now.
Oh yeah, I had to alert you because I think you were told 3, and then you were collecting more. I'm like, guys.
Okay, wait, but hold on. To be fair, they came up to me and was like, so I want to be your lover. I was like, okay. And probably one of the hardest moments in getting back to like the dark place was when I was surrounded by 5 of them at the same time, and like it was this secret Morse code where, like, I don't know if you've ever been in a room with like your lover where you wanted to like sneak off to another room, and so you do this like weird, like, hey, like this weird, you're not, obviously you guys can't see it on the podcast, but like this weird
she's looking like seductively at us,
like weird gesture, a little top left tap,
so I had that with one person, and then I would be looking at it like B-Dave, and B-Dave would be like, hey, like giving me that look like, are you okay, like is everything fine? Then I would look over at Kelly, and Kelly's like, do you want to get it, like they're all and then Satine comes over, and I'm just like, oh shit. It was amazing, because I had to deal with legitimately one vocal conversation with all of them, and simultaneously maintain 6 different like physical conversations, and I was just like, oh, if I give the wrong physical cue, like nuclear bomb's gonna happen. Like, I don't know. So I had to like walk away and laugh from it. But B-Dave caught on and got me in a room. And one of the, like, continuing on with one of the most intense scenes I've ever done was he and I yelling at each other in one of the rooms, and both my childer and his childer with their ear pressed against the door. And we both of us as players knew that, so I ramped it up and just started wailing and yelling at him. And after that, we both had to have like a really big hug and be like, "You okay?" Like at a game, it was intense. It was fun.
Out of curiosity, does this influence how you play your character on at Geek and Sundry for your dynamic with B-Dave?
Oh, geez, Mary and Joseph. No, for me, and probably yes for B-Dave. Yeah, which is odd. So B-Dave approached me about like having a relationship with Nelly and all that jazz, and I was like, I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not gonna like openly like, hey, let's have a relationship, much like Lucretia and
Saudade.
Yeah. So he approached it much like how he plays his character in your guys' game, whereas I play Nelly as well, you guys are just gonna have to find out about how I play Nelly, but she's more into her fashion, and if somebody comes along her way, then great, which is what you guys probably see with me and B-Dave. B-Dave and I have known each other for almost a decade. Yeah, so we became like literally the mom and dad of Vampire World, apparently. we act like 2 crazy parents. Yeah, it's fun. So that scene, though, yes, it did feed kind of how we interact in Geek and Sundry, but other than that, no. I try to separate the 2.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's really hard to separate all my vampires.
How many do you have now?
Active?
Yeah, active.
Mm-hmm. 3 active, and 3 on standby if those games start to go again. So my very first character was she was a La Sombra. I forgot her name right now. Elena, that's her name, Elena. Then I had Artemisia, who was a Ventru. Then I play Lola in LA by Night, so that's the one that I play actively. I play Lucretia in your guys's, and I play Nelly on screen. Woo! A lot of vampires. How many vampires do you play, Ryan?
Okay, so right now I haven't been actively playing vampire, partly because of time. But in the LA by Night, which is to differentiate from the Geek and Sundry show, also called LA by Night, but is part of the One World by Night Chronicle, the last character that I played was a Quajan, and one of the few in the entire network. And so what's interesting is that he's one of those Quajan vampires as opposed to like a canine vampire or kindred vampire. But before then, my bigger vampires were Virgo Reese, who was a Bruja. He was a Camarilla lawyer who worked for a few archons and overthrew a prince using the Justicariat and legal precedent. And I told the story before, so I didn't want to regale that constantly, but it was the first time that I prosecuted a prince out of power that was ever done in the network, and then other people started to do it, and it was kind of cool that I set that precedent. But my favorite character, his name is Calvin de Largo, and he sounds like this, and if he sounds very familiar, it's because I used that same character voice in a game called Anesidora.
I was going to say, that's Delexo.
Delexo. And he was my favorite character. He only lived for 10 months before he was killed. And the idea is that a lot of people embrace people when they're young, when they're pretty, when they're powerful. And I thought, what if a Malkavian embraced a character who was in his 60s, was old, was not right of mind because it was his grandfather and he kind of wanted him around. So I took a concept that shouldn't work and was so much fun to play because I always expected him to die. Yeah. And so he was a professor of fairy tales, and he would talk to people in terms of fairy tales, and he always believed that the person he was talking to was probably his grandchild. So he always over-explained everything to make sure that, are you okay? Have you eaten yet? I could show you where to eat. So he was super comedic to play. And the really cool part was that when the character died, and I would tell people, it was strange that people out of character started crying because they loved the character. But he was meant to be just a comedy piece, and he was not supposed to last very long. And he was never in his right mind. And for some reason, people just kind of thought that was fun.
So you have these magazine covers here.
Oh, yeah. So, to bring it back to our original stuff about theming and dark humor and all of that, we ended up doing a second game for our Vampire LARP because people had a good time. And one of the things we did was we made a whole bunch of fake magazines. And I used this program online that has magazine templates that you can fill in and add pictures and add text and everything. And we filled them either with clues about the story and the game, or things that players were up to, or just random filler stuff. It's a humorous take on the edge of the masquerade, because of course some of the things going on in these magazines are questionable. And I think one of my favorites was I made a teen magazine, and Joanna's critique of it was that she felt it was less like a teen magazine for young women and more like a teen magazine for young vampires.
Oh yes, this one, right?
Yeah.
Majesty. Oh my god, so good.
At a certain point, every single thing about it was about biting somebody, and I was they're gonna know.
Yeah, so it's got Nina Dobrev on the cover, and it's all about Vampire Diaries, and it has, "Is biting sexy? UCLA students say yes."
Oh, God.
So we had that.
I would totally read this magazine.
It's got great...
And it's very pink and
pink and blue and all this stuff.
It basically looks like a 17 magazine circa 2006, you guys.
Yeah.
I can post all the magazines in the hype group, and then people can actually see them.
Absolutely. We will post...
Really
we should post these up when this podcast goes up. But
that'll be great.
But also just the amount of work that you do, not just making these magazines, but just putting an environment together is, I feel very privileged to be part of this group, because when other people walk into this place, the last game, we had Man's Chinese Theater, and we had the Hollywood sign, and we had a little red carpet with stanchions and a backdrop, and like we think about just making things very, very comprehensive, and it's just. So
I was legit scared that somebody was going to ask to take my picture. I was legit scared.
Yeah, we're very into the ambience. So like we borrowed our friend's photo setup, and we got a piece of red fabric from Fabric Store to make our red carpet, and there were like people posing for pictures, which was funny because I think like 2 people actually took a picture on the red carpet, and everyone else pretended they were having their picture taken on the red carpet.
I completely avoided as a little sombra, as I should.
And then the Hollywood sign, I like bought a cardboard thing on Amazon, but I also work with LEDs sometimes, so I just made like a little LED strip to light it from below. And then the Man Chinese Theater, my mom actually did, because she does a lot of like prop and costume stuff.
Wow.
So she cut these basically 3 squares out of cardboard and then ironed fabric onto it. And that's how she made the Chinese Theater.
And how tall did that end up being? Like 8 or?
I think it was 7 feet.
7 feet?
Yeah.
It was tall.
But it was big.
It was really, really cool. Though I would say my favorite decorating was, or looking at it, was a graveyard.
Oh, the graveyard was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for this game, I only had one thing that I knew that I wanted from the beginning coming in. And I said I want to raise Rudolph Valentino, the silent film star from the 20s from the dead. And he's buried in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. And, you know, what's a good spooky vampire game without a cemetery? Fortunately, Bruce has a space in his side yard that was clear and large enough, and I was able to make tombstones. We had some actual real tombstones, and then we made some with some of the actual names on them, and it was a really great space, I think, because we used it for a scene, but then afterwards players were able to use it for certain elements.
Yeah, it was a
really
great like meeting area for people. We basically got a bunch of like Halloween store tombstones. Joanna set up some candles out, like we had all these electric candles, so it really felt like a spooky graveyard.
Fog machine.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
And then so she did her scene with Rudolph Valentino, but before Valentino even showed up, the Nosferatu clan showed up looking for him, along with a Malkavian, and they were like curious to find this guy. And Joanna and Nico, who was our NPC playing Valentino, had not arrived yet, and they were busy doing other things. So
we were busy getting ready.
Yeah, so they were like, well, Joanna decided to play 2 NPCs with 2 different costumes and different wigs. So
I only had one wig.
Well, I mean, she had a wig and she had a not wig.
Otherwise known as my hair.
Yeah. But it meant that whenever she switched characters, she had to change outfits and adjust the wig. So she was getting ready and Valentino was getting ready. So there was no one in the graveyard. So I was like, I guess I'll hang out in the graveyard and entertain these guys so they aren't just waiting around. So Demas just shows up in Hollywood Forever for some reason, Bishop of the Savant wandering around the graveyard. And our friend Knox, who plays in the game, came out of Obfuscate and started talking to me, and it was literally me and Knox wandering through the graveyard discussing like old Hollywood and like the history of LA and the history of theater and like what it means to be an actor and what it means to be a performer and all this stuff. And we're basically just like kind of hamming it up for the other players, because you have the rest of the Nosferatu clan and a Malkavian wandering around in Obfuscate just like following us, which I thought was just this hilariously vampire scene of all of these vampires just obfuscated, invisible, wandering through the cemetery, following these people, having a conversation. And it was kind of a beautiful, just like pure roleplay scene. And once again, a little lighthearted.
Yeah. You turn Knox into a Savant? Come on.
Not yet. I mean,
How dare you?
If I get things my way, the whole city will be Savant.
Yes. I mean, no.
Yeah. If I get things my way, they will all be dead.
Yeah. But so that was fun, and there were some other other ridiculous light elements to our game. vampires have this power, animalism, that allows them to speak to animals and control them.
Oh no.
Yes.
And normally that's a very loose thing. If you can even do it, you kind of have to talk to a storyteller to get it done or find a way to fit it into a scene. But we were like, what if people could really find a way to do this? So our first game, we had a friend of ours playing a bat. And she was literally just a bat flying around. And any player with animalism could talk to her and send her on missions. And then for the second game, we added an NPC who was playing an owl.
Which I think actually one of the funniest moments for me of the night. So the other thing about the graveyard is that that was actually Ryan helped me come up with a small treasure hunt for some of the players that started in the graveyard, where Valentino had a clue to give the people who were worthy enough to find it. And Knox, as his character, was intrigued and looking for some stuff. And he got his animal friends to help him. So watching a Nosferatu, a bat and an owl, trying to dig up graves in a cemetery. At a certain point, the owl was trying to dig with her claws, and it wasn't going very well.
So the player was literally, she was just using one finger to kind of dig at the ground like it was her claws.
How did I miss all this?
You were off doing politics or something.
One of the things with our games, we try to make a lot of things happening in a lot of different rooms. So people will be afterwards like, I didn't even know this thing was happening.
Yeah. Which is what I was saying when I was saying to you, I'm not really sure what's going on with your character. It's because Demas and Lucretia have a lot to talk about. Not so much, I think, with any of the characters I played so far yet. We'll see.
I just kept getting whisked off to different private meetings, and I'm like, guys, I want to... Okay. So
one of my favorite moments with the Nosferatu and the animals when I was hanging out outside was Joanna had also planted these rats all around the graveyard. We had these little plastic rats. So Knox was carrying one around as his little rat buddy, and Julia came in as an owl and grabbed a rat in her mouth and was running around with it, and then eventually dropped it, and he was like, "Oh, my poor little animal friend. It looks like you have passed to the other side." And I was just like, this is so beautiful. This is what I love about LARP. I love the morality and these twisted, dark themes, but I also love these fun, goofy moments where, someone's carrying a rat in their mouth, and then someone's like, "Oh, the poor rat." And in the first game, our friend Jess was playing a completely crazed Malkavian who was the child of Prince of Sacramento and was being tormented the entire night by Joanna's NPC. So
what are you talking about? I'm her Auntie Cora.
Yeah.
I always make sure that she's saved and loved and protected. Especially when I leave her alone.
So she, at one point, Cora, I think, told her that the bat was an ancient vampire who shapeshifted.
Yeah, I did.
Well done.
And Jess was literally chasing Alyssa through the house as Alyssa was running around flapping her bat wings. And it was amazing.
So I'm just looking here at our Facebook. We do actually have a question from the audience, and this actually comes from Matthew Webb, who we interviewed in the past, who's running the Night in Question. And so his question for our group is, what's your experience with Vampire, and what do you think about how it's changed over the years?
This is a really interesting question, especially given Joanna's experience with Vampire.
Yeah, you can go first.
Or
I can go first. I'll be short.
Yeah, well, I think she has an interesting story about when she was introduced to Vampire.
Well, I was introduced to Vampire, 6 months ago?
About 8 months at this time.
8 months, I guess so. March, maybe. So I've only ever played the 2 games.
Yeah.
So that's my history.
So Joanna,
I assume that the history will grow, but that's where I am right now. I came into it completely blind. I hadn't played the tabletop game. I hadn't played the LARP. I knew things about vampires that did not involve the White Wolf universe. For me, I would say what is interesting coming into it now, especially because when I did come into it, it was right before the release of the new version. And to see some of the experienced players and the backstory and the knowledge that they had brought from years and years and years of playing, and to see how that worked within our game and how it didn't. Because some elements of our game, as I understand it, because I don't have the history, but some elements of our game were built almost to bring in elements of the 5th version, which meant that for players who have been playing maybe 20 years, there were things about our game that were different for them, that were a little bit more of a curveball. So it almost put all of us on a little bit more of an even playing field, especially because so many of the players were new.
Yeah, I also love, as I was saying, after the museum, Joanna was like, I'd like to be a storyteller.
I didn't say that.
What?
That's your...
Oh, well, she said she wanted to help run it and help
Yeah,
write
I said
the
I'd rather
things and
help
come
run
up with
it.
the
Yeah.
things. But the point is that she knew a lot about general vampire literature.
Listen, I was Anne Rice trash in high school.
So she had a very good base, but literally it was like, go read the Wikipedia, and then 1 to 2 months later, we were writing characters together.
Yep.
So it was a pretty quick turnaround. So my experience with Vampire is a little over 10 years ago. Well, I guess I'll start back in middle school, which is when I first found out about the rule book and got the tabletop book and checked it out and read it and never played it. I had the book because I was like, the world's really cool. I like the setting. I looked up the powers and stuff, but never actually got around to playing the game. And then when I was in college, I ended up meeting some people who did a Vampire LARP, and I was like, I've never done LARPing, and I thought the Vampire game was cool. So I joined up with them. And my first character I ever played, I loved, and I think is a great character concept for a new player to play. He was a Brujah built pretty much entirely for combat, and his entire mission in life was to find a new person to follow and swear himself to. That he didn't his personal goal was literally to find someone else and help them with their goals. Because I felt like that was a great character to come into a game where people already knew each other and just be like, I have all of these combat stats. I'm amazing at fighting. I want someone to serve.
Right on.
So that was fun. And then, so that experience I find very different, my experience in college, from a lot of other people I've met since doing more vampire stuff and meeting more LARPers out in LA. And the biggest reason is because we reset the world every year. A lot of people in the larger community or who run games around LA, they do these ongoing worlds. Some people have characters that have literally been going for years, if not decades. And our game, we always did 10 sessions, and you had an arc. And at the end of the 10th game, you were done. That's the end of the game. End of the city, end of those characters, everything's retired. And then the next year, we would do a newbie game where it was entirely a one-shot with pre-generated simple characters just to show people the system, introduce them to the world. And then after that, we would start a brand new chronicle that would once again go 10 sessions. And as they say, you get really shaped by the first LARP you do. That is what I like. I like the new worlds, new characters, big fancy arc, and then you're done. Yeah, I have never played one of the continuous games. I may end up playing it only because I know so many people who love LARPing and I'm friends with them. But honestly, I'm not super interested in it because I feel this feeling of going into a game where there's so much already defined, there's so many characters already in power, with coteries, with an understanding of each other, and I just feel the act of pushing into that kind of alienates me as a person. Which
you're
is a
saying
whole...
you like to be in control.
No, what I'm saying is I like to have the understanding that I'm coming in at the beginning of the story. I guess would be the best way to put it.
I guess what I was referring to is it's what makes you a good creator of these stories. It's because you are able to sort of put the setting in place, basically.
But that is the process of the game that I love is both starting the game and creating new characters and building arcs. And when I say this is now, I'm getting to a whole other topic about like short-term versus long-term play. But what I like about LARP arcs, as someone who does a lot with film and TV, both I studied film and TV theory, and I've been working with a lot of this kind of stuff since then and meeting a lot of people who do it. I love the process of beginning, middles, and ends of stories. And I find with short form play, you can make it a lot tighter and really powerful. So I appreciate that like larger ones can have arcs within them, but I haven't seen how that plays out exactly.
Well, with our LARP, it makes it interesting because obviously the first game was supposed to be a one-shot.
Yeah.
And then it was a one-shot with a sequel, but now we have a defined arc, and we know where it's going to go. We know it's going to be 3 more games, so it's going to be 5 games in total. And it gives us something to work for. It raises the stakes for our players because they know that they have to achieve their goals within a certain amount of time. And that's exciting because it means that we can... Also, it doesn't mean that we're not going to play another game. We're not going to run any more games. I mean, it just means that we get to tell a complete story, which is really cool.
Yeah, so the thing for us is like the first game was pretty much about vampire politics. And we didn't get too much into our LA Hollywood setting because so much of it was just teaching new players vampire politics and about the council and the world and the society.
Well, the first game wasn't even set in LA proper. It was sort of off in the woods.
Yeah, we like set it in the woods in the Angeles forest to like just get it away, and it was very much about vampires. Then our second game was all about the city of Hollywood and its history and old Hollywood and film and all that, and the La Brea Tar Pits and its relationship with old artifacts and civilizations and all this kind of stuff, really bringing the setting in. And then our third, fourth, and fifth game that we have planned, we already have theming planned for. So each game will focus around a specific theme. And it builds, so like the third game kind of starts to set up the fifth game while setting up the fourth game, and then the fourth game is going to have a lot of payoffs while leading into the fifth game, and then the fifth game is where we're trying to put all of our payoffs, essentially, at least whatever we can fit into the night. And I am excited about that because it gives us a great like space to tell a story and to theme things and create elements.
So the question again was, what is my experience in Vampire and what I think has changed over the years? Well, much like Joanna, most of our audience knows this. I just started LARPing last year. It was a full year in June that I've been LARPing. And Vampire was my very first LARP, so I got introduced to Vampire, and I've told this story many times, doing the Queen Mary video shoot for By Night Studios. They were doing their Kickstarter campaign. They needed a bunch of extras, and I rolled in as a business attire vampire because that's what I was told.
Nice.
Didn't know that I was playing Adventure and kind of fell in love with the whole idea, but didn't pick up LARP until like I think almost 2.5 years afterwards, where I got invited to... I was supposed to do the Queen Mary thing, but I got pulled off for a business, and then the year after that was the Vegas game. So I got really spoiled in my first LARP ever, and my first Vampire LARP was in Vegas. Yeah. So it was a very interesting night where there was a lot of politics that happened, and it was really hard to like kind of jump into the world, but there were people there who made it easier for me, which was amazing. So I don't have a vast knowledge of Vampire over the years, but what I can say in the year-ish that I've been playing and the couple of years that I've had previously, what I have seen change is actually in the last 3 months of right before V5 rolled in. So as somebody who is actually playing V5 on live stream, I could tell you some of the subtle differences between the old system and the new system. The biggest difference for me was having to choose a predator type. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but vampires feed on people. What? It's such a concept. But if you actually like really dig into how a vampire has to get the blood, it's a very mature theme. You have to kill somebody. You have to do some really dark stuff. And a lot of the controversy that happened in the last 3 months circulated on these really controversial points, one of which was the predator types. I won't go into the really controversial stuff, but know that White Wolf did an amazing job, particularly Jason Carl, in curbing some of the commentary that had occurred. I have a kitty rubbing up against me. It's great.
She's hungry.
So if you guys like to read up on that or listen to what Jason had to say, it was absolutely amazing what he has said. But touching on the predator types, reading through the book, it was really tough to pick how I was going to take my victims, because you have to role play this really dark moment.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you have to kill people in V5? Because you haven't had to do that before.
In what sense? In your predator type?
Well,
no,
in
I mean,
the
you're not.
past, like, you could, like, feed at people at clubs, or, like, you could drain them and have a herd and all that kind of
You're
stuff.
still draining blood from them, and if you don't do it right, you could actually kill them. And
Yeah.
so a lot of the LARPs that I have seen, or a lot of tabletop stuff, people have glossed over that idea. With playing it on tabletop, it is, I air quote, glossed over, but you have dice that you're rolling that if your dice go against you, which they happen to do a lot, you potentially can kill someone. So, and if you watch our first episode, Victor, B-Day's character, almost kills a mortal because he frenzies and just grabs him. He rolled bad and all the blood was everywhere. So to say that you have to kill someone, no, but you're more likely to because the stakes are higher. To wrap up my answer, what I have seen in the change is how the culture has been accepting, glossing over, again I air quote, some of these darker themes, and now that we live in this, I'm going to call it a harsher reality where we have these hashtag MeToos and all this other stuff that's come out, these predator types have had a microscope on them because you have to make sure that you're not overstepping any boundaries or pissing anyone off, but still trying to make these darker themes happen. That's probably been the toughest change in the two systems. There you go.
Cool. All right. So for me, you're talking to someone who's been playing Vampire for nearly 20 years.
Yes.
So there is a huge change, especially... so I'm going to try to keep this very short, otherwise this would be its own topic. So when I started playing Vampire in 2000 on the Berkeley campus, it was affected by a couple of things. Where a lot of the Vampire was affected by the goth culture that was in San Francisco and in Oakland. So you found that the role playing in those areas was a lot more narrative and a lot more romantic and a lot more sensual because most of the goths were of that scope and wanted to have that kind of theme. So a lot of things did deal with a lot more sex rather than violence. I mean, violence obviously still happened, but we were sexy vampires because that was kind of the theme. I found personally that when you talk about like being a vampire, some of that stuff was glossed over. It did feel more like being at court, with a prince and certain court officers that just happened to feed on occasion, but usually that feeding happened off screen because people were more dealing with the politics and didn't really consider a lot of how being a vampire, would affect your mentality or how you interacted with people. So Vampire for me was a place where I actually ended up learning politics, even to the point where it affects how I deal with politics in the entertainment industry today. It actually enabled me to come out of the closet. Believe it or not. Nice. Oddly enough, I went to Berkeley, was not out of the closet. And people were like, why? Well, it's also because I was morbidly obese and no one wanted to date me. So I eventually did Vampire, found a part of myself that I kind of wanted to be. I ended up playing a character where I thought, what if I played a sexier or more sophisticated, smarter, richer version of myself? I know that CW Fox has warned people from doing that, but I did it for myself. So I ended up learning how to dress better, how to talk to people, how to be more presentable, and I ended up cutting some weight. I ended up learning to dress better, and then find that people actually responded in kind. and I learned a lot of that role play scenario from Vampire. Nowadays, fast forward many years later, even including being a head storyteller for San Francisco, helping found the LA game, which is still in play, the one that Sin plays. Yep. A lot of these themes are now having to almost be over-explained. My personal opinion, which is not going to be very popular, is Vampire is a dark game. If you're not comfortable with certain things, you should find a different game. Yeah. There are other games that do exist that might work within what you are looking for when exploring those dark themes that you feel safe with. All right.
On that note.
Social medias. Bruce, what is your social medias?
I'm just at Bruce Monach on Twitter and Instagram. So my Instagram is mostly my photography and random travel photos. And my Twitter, I post about games I'm doing or shows that I'm doing. And if anyone ever wants to talk about LARPy stuff or the rules for Anesidora or what's going on, I'll chat on Twitter.
Oh yeah, Anesidora. Where can people find Anesidora?
So Anesidora we're bringing back this. Well, you can find the first season on YouTube, Bruce Monach, and the second season starts on Saturday, October 6th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And that'll be our first episode of season 2.
All right, Joanna, where can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Atrius, A-T-R-I-A-S. There we go. My Twitter is, I think, of the social justice warrior variety with some humor sprinkled in. And my Instagram is all pictures of flowers and cookies. So, pick your poison, really.
We should take a moment, since Joanna bakes, to mention that at our vampire game, she made a giant bleeding cake that was really fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was tasked with making a birthday cake for the first LARP. It was Satine's birthday.
Yeah, Satine's birthday.
And again, Bruce is the mastermind. He's like, wouldn't it be really cool if there was a cake, but it was a bleeding cake? Said, I've never done that before, but we'll see how it goes. I actually pulled it off, although I did say to everybody assembled before I cut it, now listen, you've been role-playing all night. If nothing happens, you need to role-play the situation.
Forsooth, it bled.
Yeah. It did bleed. There's video evidence. It's on Twitter.
Right on.
All right, Cynthia Marie.
Speaking of social media, you can find me on Friday nights on Geek and Sundry. So twitch.tv/Geek and Sundry for LA by Night. You can find me on Twitter. I am a hell of a lot more active now on Twitter. At Syndancer. Or you can find me on Instagram, which is slightly different. It's at Cynthia__Marie. That is 2 underscores. And I will have some exciting news coming up because a couple of other shows might be coming along as well. And also some other possible appearances that might be coming up soon. So stay tuned.
All right, and this is Ryan Omega. You can find me on Instagram under Ryan Omega. You can find me on Twitter under Ryan OMGA. And you can find me on Anesidora as playing Delexo, who has gone through some changes. So that'll be interesting. And a couple of other things have been popping up recently. So looking forward to that. And before I go, want to thank our Patreon supporters,
yes,
who have been supporting us forever. If you are interested in joining our Patreon, you can find it under Life Action Roleplay. And definitely want to thank our friends over at Twin Mask,
yes,
over at Lost Colonies, and to Geeky Tees, who have just moved into a new building.
Woo!
And so excited for when that opens.
Grand opening next weekend.
Yes, next weekend in Burbank. So I have checked out that space. It is big. It is amazing. Donna has some plans for that, and she's terribly excited, and I'm excited for her.
Awesome.
All right. Does anybody have anything else before you go?
No, just speaking of Twin Mask, I gotta go pack.
I also have to go pack.
Let's go.
All right. Until next time, a lot of us are packing. And until then, bye.
Bye.
Bye.